Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Kevin Hegge, a documentary filmmaker whose work includes the 2012 feature She Said Boom, the story of Fifth Column, and the brand new Tramps, which explores the rise of the new romantics from the ashes of the punk movement. It's having a special Pride screening in Toronto this Thursday, June 22nd at the Hot Docs Ted Rogers Cinema in advance of its theatrical release next month, and Kevin will be there for a panel discussion afterwards. You should check that out. Kevin picked Madonna, Truth or Dare, Alek Keshishian's 1991 documentary about Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour. It promised fans an unvarnished, behind-the-scenes look at the controversial show, and mostly delivered, even throwing in candid moments in which Madonna is shown to be a lot cooler than Warren Beatty and Kevin Costner, and definitively cooler than the Toronto police. And also, she may have inadvertently created reality television while making this, but we'll get to that. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Well, I think I was asked to pick something loosely related to the documentary that I made, Tramps.
Interesting.
And initially, I thought, my gut instinct was to talk about Hail the New Puritan, which is a film by Charles Atlas, an American video artist and filmmaker, not a bodybuilder, but
I figured we should make that distinction for the listener.
Yeah, I always forget about that. But he had made a film for Channel 4 in the 80s that was like a pseudo documentary about a day in the life of the choreographer Michael Clark, who is a central character in the movie Tramps. But thought it might be a bit too on the nose. So just as soon as I thought of the first, most impactful music documentary, in my life, my gut instinct was Truth or Dare by Madonna, because it's one of the films that I watch, a number of times a year, whether it be forcing it upon younger friends of mine, to give them some perspective, or just out of, obsession and being able to relive it over and over again. So, I guess I just chose it because it's sort of one of my earliest memories of seeing a documentary. I mean, especially of its kind, because it was so groundbreaking. And that, I think, still parallels a lot of the themes that I have going on in the stuff that I want to make.
Well, and I guess that begs the obvious question. How old were you? When did you first see it, if it was an early experience for you? Because, I mean, it was 1991. I was already...
Yeah, so I was 89. So I guess 12.
Okay. Did you see it theatrically? Did you actually get to go experience it?
I don't think I saw it theatrically, no. And I'm not sure. I guess it would have been on the movie channel or something. And I don't actually remember the time difference from when things came out in the theater and made it to like the movie channel or however I would have seen it at that time.
Probably about a year, really.
It seemed it seemed urgent, that's for sure.
Yeah. We saw it under this huge cloud of controversy because we knew that it had premiered at Cannes, I think, and was getting blowback for being provocative in 1991, because this is still the Bush era, right? And America was in the first wave of its conservative Christian Republican entanglement. And Madonna was so provocative. She was a provocateur. I don't think Sex had happened yet. The book had not been published yet.
No.
But she was the one who wore her lingerie on the outside in the 80s on MTV and scandalized everybody. The kids today have no idea. I love saying the kids today, but they have no idea how little you had to do to provoke.
Yeah.
Just
but
the fact that
she did a lot to provoke.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it was all over the place too. Black men on crosses in videos for Like a Prayer. And I think it was, Papa Don't Preach obviously was a pro-life, was perceived, embraced as a pro-life song, even though it kind of really wasn't. It was more of a love song, and it's no different from the doo-wop songs of the 50s and 60s. It was just much more explicit in its positioning.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it more as a pro-choice song, but yeah, that's a curious way to think of it. But Yeah, I mean, those things I didn't understand were kind of forming this, you know, perspective, on me as like a kid. I had no idea like the depths of the content really. Um, and in terms of truth or dare, I mean, it is still pretty provocative, and in a lot of ways it's gone out of, it's maybe socially a bit dated, in terms of she says some unwoke things,
Sure, yeah.
just for the time and everything, but also, it's still pretty shocking, I think. Like the same as the sex book. I mean, nobody really went that far after that. I think that like you can see the effects of her work in pop music today and everything. But if you go back and watch that documentary, whether you think it's performative or if it really is a sort of fly on the wall perspective on Madonna's, interiors, it's still totally debatable. And so things like, performing fellatio on the Coke bottle and all of that,
Right.
or Evian bottles, right?
Evian, yeah.
It's still pretty wild, and hilarious and fun. And I think also the goofiness with which she kind of meandered through all that controversial behavior in the actual movie is something that's really amazing about it, something that's really unique about it. Because there's not so much of a barrier of, as much as Madonna is about, this facade. There wasn't so much an on-camera facade developed at that time, because of the internet or what, or I guess kids these days can let us know what, but there still was um, a visibility there that is pretty unique to the time, a candidness, that however performative it is still unparalleled, I find.
Yeah, it was really striking revisiting it to see the Warren Beatty sequences, where he has his little tantrum about how you're on camera, you're on all the time, and they're like, what's the point of doing something if it's not happening in front of a camera? And the complete disconnect between that comment coming from him and him not understanding that he's been performing on some level since the 1960s in front of cameras, and directing himself, like just the sheer lack of self-knowledge in Beatty, which is something I have seen subsequently in interviews. I've seen him, later in life, at Q&As. I was at the Q&A for Rules Don't Apply, and he's just, this is a guy who's sunk into a box of a vision of himself that hasn't changed since 1974, and
Yeah.
watching him confronted with the way things are going to be in this movie in 1991 is amazing. Because he just made, I mean, for context, he and Madonna had worked together in Dick Tracy, and they were dating, because that's his thing. And it's icky and all, but he kind of trails along. And for a certain, like for the older members of the audience that I saw the film with, he and Kevin Costner were the hooks. Like they were the people they were more interested in seeing, because this is presumably these, candid walk-ons from their real selves. And you do get to see Costner's real self when he says neat, and it's absolutely adorable, because that is who he is. Like he has the vocabulary of a 1940s Midwestern person.
Yeah. I was more on Madonna's side where, it's more like, ugh.
Yeah. But he's trying to connect with her, I think, in that moment. Like he's genuinely, if he hadn't felt that, he wouldn't have said that word. I feel like that's a genuine moment that is also square, like incredibly square. And so she simply rejects it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of the power of something like that being created at the time. Her show, the Blonde Ambition tour, was that, those are other artists and performers, and they may be squares, but it's powerful that she can do something that kind of alters their field of vision.
Yeah.
And like his saying neat was probably sort of a loss for words.
Yeah, I don't think he had the language for what he was not seeing, but what he was experiencing in it.
Yeah.
I have never seen. Have you ever seen Madonna live? I have not seen the show live.
Yeah, I have seen Madonna live, and it's kind of a sad story. A lot of it is,
Oh no.
2023, we can say, is the root of a lot of my trauma, personal trauma. Blonde Ambition, was happening in Toronto, and my parents were concert goers, and they would get us tickets to the big concerts, but I don't know. I mean, my Madonna, childhood obsession was full blown, so I don't know how one thing led to another. And we were in Toronto when she was playing, because I'm from a small town.
Hmm.
And we were staying on Yonge Street. And I remember, I guess because I was like, I guess 11, because it was while the movie was being shot, or 10, who knows. But I remember standing on the balcony of the hotel and like sobbing and breathing in the air and thinking, somehow envisioning the city as like a dome, and that I was sharing the air with Madonna. I really truly thought that I was sharing the air within the city with Madonna, but I was like absolutely crushed that it was not there, and it only got worse, as time went on, because of Truth or Dare, and the concert itself being so like groundbreaking. And you know it's so crazy to think of now, because of course the infamous like masturbation scene, and which comes just before Like a Prayer, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And Like a Virgin and everything. And when I think back about it, songs like a Virgin, and how anthemic they were to me as like a child who, I wouldn't say that came from any sort of sexually progressive background or anything. Just like a working class small town background. So it's funny now. It's like when you see kids, on TikTok dancing and singing to WAP by Cardi B, and Megan Thee Stallion, and I was pretty mortified when I found out that my nieces knew that song, and without even considering it shocking. Like when I asked them, they're like, "Yeah," and then you have to think like, I guess it's like a Virgin, and that's really fun, in context, to put the whole thing in context, but I don't know, just the way it was packaged in that show, I still find it like gives me pause. And the fact that famous scene in the movie that happens in Toronto, where she calls Toronto the fascist state of Toronto, and they actually try to arrest Madonna, and she's just like, I'm going to do it harder. And, and thank God she did, because it's such an amazing part of the movie. And actually, I don't know, maybe it simultaneously put Toronto on the map for me, but also rooted my existence here in a sort of shame.
Yeah, I mean, it puts us on the map for the wrong reasons, right? For being reactionary. It's like right around the same time when June Rowlands, I think it was, tried to ban the Bare Naked Ladies as a concept because she didn't like the name. And maybe it isn't the perfect name for them anymore, but it was at the time, the sort of childish glee that they had in their songs. It sounded like it was an immature name deliberately chosen. Yeah. And if you don't see it and you immediately feel provoked, Madonna's provocations are, I think, far more deliberate and structured and part of the art, right? I mean, it's the reason she does what she does. But Toronto was just in a really bad place at the time. We were not handling our grown-up words very well.
Yeah, well, I think the world was was sort of underdeveloped. Was unprepared for everything that Madonna had to, to address at the time, trying to mature as an artist and addressing, these ideas of like religion and her religious upbringing, and all this stuff that seems pretty trite, now, but like the Pope tried to ban her. That's something that's really joyous about the movie to me, is the idea of, it's like when Justify My Love came out, and I had to get my parents to, well, I don't know if I got them to drive me to Toronto, but I remember like you could only see it on VHS because much music wouldn't play it, and I bought
right.
Still own it, and my parents never, like, I don't know, it was such an awakening for me, but it's not like her work awakened me to any sort of like dark sexual depths. It's like your mind isn't ready to take in certain elements, when you're growing up until it is. And so I was scandalized by Justify My Love, but it wasn't like it illuminated me to everything that she was talking about that I know now. um, so I guess what I'm saying is there's cancel culture now, but at the time you were just banned. And I think that because of Truth or Dare, it rooted this thing in me, like, oh, banned, that's so cool. Like that's like the ultimate
Status symbol,
compliment.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like the ultimate camp compliment because literally you were too much for much. And yeah, it really sort of forced a perspective, I think, on me as a child. Thank God.
I mean, do you think you would have turned out to be a different person without the influence of?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, oh, like, being a closeted gay kid in a small town, it's a total cliche, but absolutely it matters what you see in those times and what you have access to. And thank God my parents didn't censor me in a way that they didn't allow me to form my own opinions, and they didn't shelter me from anything like that. And maybe they were just naive to it. Maybe they were just naive to like how far Madonna was going, but they couldn't be at the time because you did anything and it would be on ET for like weeks straight, and it'd be on all the papers, and it was, if you rocked the boat, the ripple effect was massive, and it was
Oh
so
yeah.
it was so easy to do that. But absolutely, I think that just like a lot of gay kids or queer kids or just whatever, people probably latched onto that as a sort of as the unknown. You know what I mean? I don't even think it was about understanding everything that was happening in the movie. um I don't even want to mention some things, but there are some things that still I'm kind of like, why did that happen?
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my twice weekly newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. This week I wrote about John Wick Chapter 4, Criterion's glorious new 4K edition of the rules of the game, and the UHD release of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1. Because I'm a nerd. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Twitter account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. There's an argument that this film is the first time, because of the scale of its release, the availability that followed on tape, and the rotation on cable everywhere. This is the first chance a lot of people had to see casual queer life.
Yeah.
In front of them.
And the result is, I don't know if you've seen the kind of response film Strike a Pose about her dancers. It came out like maybe 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, it was at Hot Docs, wasn't it?
It was at Hot Docs, yeah. And it's just the guys, the dancers, getting together and talking about the experience and showing where they are now. And it's it's really tragic because of course some of them died of AIDS, and many are like sort of living in squalor, and there's all this resentment against Madonna that's obviously exponentially grown over the years because of this perceived neglect of them. As soon as the tour was done, they kind of,
I see.
And also the fascinating thing about that film is that there was such a hush around AIDS, and Madonna's sort of being really brazen with putting that as a central focus on the show, and tributes to Keith Haring. And it's the early 90s, so it was into the AIDS epidemic, but still it wasn't commonplace for people to talk about that. So for her to put that at the center of that film, um not knowing that a large number of the dancers were HIV positive or had AIDS, So she didn't even know that. So for them to be performing, on that stage and like hiding that must have been terrifying for them. And it is, and that's what they document in that movie, Strike a Pose. So um, Madonna is, it's interesting, the mise en scene, like, the claim to be mise en scene, and uh the claim to candidness and whatever truthfulness in that movie is pretty, it's interesting. I don't think that it defeats the movie in any way. That of course she is precise and plotting with her, what she shows and doesn't show, but you know it's obvious now that if you look at some horrific trends and following really gross families around on TV and stuff like that, unfortunately we have Madonna to blame for that. But also there's a lot of nuance in reality television that I think it's still kind of artful. I think it's still really skillful to blur the lines between performance and reality. And yeah, and I think in a way that kind of, I think that as a person that shaped me to be interested in stuff like the New Romantics that I'm talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I was trying to come up with an easy statement about truth or dare, because I always have to write the intro and the outro for these things.
Uh-huh.
And the one thing that stunned me reading over the just the full package of, lists and notes and credits and things. One of the cinematographers was Daniel Pearl, who shot the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, he was part of the camera team. And that feels like it must have been a deliberate, I mean, it probably wasn't a deliberate thing. It was just like, here's a guy who can do handheld and keep up. But it is such a weird, like, I couldn't find any interviews with him where he discusses it. But
wait, what year did Texas Chainsaw come out?
74. So this is almost 20 years later.
Wow.
And he
I had no idea.
No, he shot the remake as well in 2003, but he was a journeyman. He just worked all over the place.
Right.
But I wondered, like, it crossed my mind, like, does Madonna know that? Is this some sort of weird, like, because it feels like the sort of thing that is deliberate, but it probably isn't. It's probably just a guy with, like, he was available in the right window.
I don't know what the filmmaker's relationship, like, it's rumored that he had like a sort of like a student film, like a film he made in university or something, like some sort of version of Wuthering Heights.
Keshishian, yeah, I heard about that too.
Yeah, that Madonna had seen. I don't know how or why she saw that, but
her music was in it, so the story goes. So either he wrote to her and she allowed it to happen, or he came to her through lawyers. But yeah, he used the Kate Bush Wuthering Heights song and a Madonna track as well. I don't know which one, but that is supposedly how it got to her attention.
I wonder
how he came to her attention.
Yeah, so I kind of, just hearing that, I thought maybe it would be through the director somehow, but because I know that Madonna doesn't really like garish or like particularly controversial things, like the Toronto filmmaker Bruce LaBruce. He because he put her boyfriend Tony Ward in his film Hustler White, which I can't remember how the story goes, like if Madonna told him not to do it or what, or but it supposedly ruined his modeling career. But I guess he showed Bruce's films to Madonna and she called them like trash or porn or something. I don't watch this kind of thing. And then there's the sex book. So it makes you wonder, like, okay, I don't know where these connections happen, but it's hilarious thinking of how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Madonna are connected. I would just love to know who was the in between. If Tony Ward was that for Bruce and Madonna, I wonder who the in between would be for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I cannot. I think Pearl is still around, so hopefully someone will ask him. He also shot Alien versus Predator, so I have no idea. Maybe he just takes the job as it comes. But what a bizarre subnote, right? Like to this film specifically, because it is like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is messy and grotty and beautiful to look at in a horrible, ugly way, and this is manicured within an inch of his life, much like the sex book, right? I mean, there's a level of polish even in the lack of polish in Truth or Dare, where the thing gleams and it's beautiful to look at in black and white. The colors kind of turn into this wonderful monochrome palette, and you can kind of imagine what the Gautier costumes look like, but it feels like they were chasing some kind of a Wiseman aesthetic, except not, because people keep talking to the camera and she keeps talking to Alek off camera, and involves us. But it's a brilliant extension of her persona. It's the kind of thing Lady Gaga does now, where you just connect to your fans through the camera all the time and make us, we're implicated in everything that happens because we're the voyeurs, even in this unfocused, quote unquote, unrehearsed documentary.
Yeah. I mean, I can assume that. I haven't seen any Lady Gaga talk to any camera or anything. I'm too defensive about the Madonna thing. But yeah, in so many ways, pop stars, or at least, and that's something, talking about the division between like reality and performance of a character, that I'm able to celebrate in Truth or Dare. And then, it would be a larger conversation, I think, to talk about that in people like Lady Gaga and the, I can't even say the word, the Kardashian mums.
Yeah.
And I would be challenged to sort of revisit my opinions about that in the context of Truth or Dare in a contemporary sense, because I would have to kind of try and untangle my own sort of relationship with the sincerity that I demand from an artist, but also the disregard for it. It's such a nuanced thing, and I don't know how artists like Lady Gaga not do that today, because it all just seems so manufactured. That's the thing, is there's something really special about Truth or Dare that, sure, it's obviously manufactured because it's Madonna, but there's a rawness. There's such a rawness to it. I can't say there's a rawness to it. It's all, rawness, but maybe at the expense of the people around her. I think might have been something that maybe the pop stars today don't do as much of. Like just throw everyone around them under the bus for the purpose of, audience stimulation.
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it? I mean, everything is managed on multiple levels now, because everything has to be, managed through the verticals, I think is a phrase I've heard recently, where, like everything has to be your TikToks and your socials and your box office and your records. And, like the product is the least important thing. It's how can you monetize further aspects of the product, right? Like, so Madonna got it right. She was a straight line. The product was always her.
Yeah. And the thing is we're talking, I think that whole verticals thing is about broadening the market. So like, I think that artists have less and less room to say anything now, like when you're talking about anything controversial, I don't know if Lady Gaga has done anything controversial. But
well, I mean, the accent in House of Gucci, that's about it.
Oh yeah. Her incredible lack of talent in that regard, and so many others. Or just like lack of inventiveness, I guess. There's no like invention happening there. But it's funny that it must be a struggle to find that balance of trying to broaden your audience and seem like a multifaceted artist. You have to say less and less, where at the time Madonna did the exact opposite. Like controversy was the way you broadened the scope of your, of the gaze on you. So I don't know. I know that's kind of like a okay boomer sort of thing to think about, but like I don't know. It's what makes it raw and exciting is the fact that she could take out her boobs and it would get her in more trouble, but it would only make us love her more, or just people would watching. I think she always used to say any press is good press. I think a lot of people have said that, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I feel almost like any press is bad press, for certain pop stars.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything is open to not just misinterpretation, but sort of deliberate misinterpretation, because there is some element of the world now that exists only to eat, only to like destroy, and sometimes it's warranted and sometimes it's just not. And it's been, I think, bad for expression in general, because now people are second guessing themselves and wondering who gets to tell whose stories. And some of that is really valid. There's been like that movement towards authenticity is absolutely essential. But Madonna appropriating things in the 90s to draw attention to them and make statements about them at a level that only she could is something you can't ignore, right? Like that is sort of culture warrior stuff on its own level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Madonna, you were speaking about the casual gay lifestyle or whatever.
The casual depiction of
like she had a huge falling out with her dancers because of that, because they were terrified once they were showing, just their hanging out and kissing and playing truth or dare and like really, really like silly stuff.
But she's outing them to their families, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. And just their careers, which they're obviously hoping to grow because of this experience with Madonna. And, but in the same turn, she completely revolutionized our relationship to the queer community, to the gay community, and the visibility around that in so many ways for the worse, probably, but like just in terms of like horrible television shows and stuff that resulted, but bringing it into the home and to kids like myself, where it wasn't palatable. It wasn't like something that she did to make it seem like gays are normal. This is normal. It was still provocative and shocking, and it wasn't trying to gentrify the whole, sacred queer experience or anything like that. She was, in fact, it was kind of like it was like a deification of it, but just into people's homes. And I think it's really revolutionary for that, even beyond the conversations around HIV and AIDS. Just literally like when she shows the Pride Parade, and that's such a crazy impactful scene where they just record the silence at the Pride Parade. And it's like, I think it's showing a side of that, of that time period in a really stark and powerful way. So, I guess that's the complexity of it, and like the nuance of it that I guess is still so palatable when you're watching it every few months.
That's great. I'm so glad you mentioned the Pride Parade. I was trying to figure out how to get there, but yeah, no, that is absolutely. I remember the theater just hushed, stark, quiet, wondering what was going to happen. That strange flat energy in that moment.
Wow,
it was really powerful. This is the bit where I usually bring it around and ask you if there's anything from the film you chose that has influenced you, or if there's anything you flat out borrowed, stolen, referenced. Is there, I couldn't really see it in Tramps, but is there sort of a pull that you took from Truth or Dare in their work?
No, I don't think that in Tramps, but I mean, I didn't even know that I would be making films. I made one that was just an attempt to like package a kind of obscure band into something that I could share, and then this was sort of just a personal, I had a vested interest in this wealth of like film and art that was produced around this period of time in London. But I think that the relationship is like we were talking about before, where, when I watch movies like Tramps or just think about how I ended up being interested in it, it's because I'm speaking to these kind of sometimes freaky people, or just when I was trying to show the focus of the film to my family and stuff like that, you feel like it's a picture of yourself, and like, whatever happens on camera in some Super 8 film from the 80s, it's a reflection of yourself. But I was very much like a wallflower in that experience, like going out to clubs and doing quote unquote research for the movie. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it did put the instinct in me to want to see the sort of underbelly and the freaky side of things, and I guess make the choice about whether to engage or just to observe. But definitely the urge to observe, like the, let's just say, diversity in character, of people, and being able to kind of celebrate it, and even like, moving to a city and becoming an out gay person, and all of the splendor of riches that sometimes underground community can provide. I think that it just kind of gave me the foundation to start looking around at the sort of more fun sides of life. and it's great because you can still spend a lot of time at home and enjoy it. I guess that makes any sense. But that's, I would love to get to the point where I would love to do a big budget movie with a pop star and follow them around. And because I have spent so much time with bands on tour and everything like that, I would love if that became something that I could look at specifically and kind of mirror and make my own version of a Truth or Dare. I just wonder who could ever merit, that kind of attention.
My thanks to Kevin Hegge, whose new documentary Tramps has a special Pride screening in Toronto this Thursday, June 22nd at the Hot Docs Ted Rogers Cinema, with Kevin, Kat Duma, Jeffrey Hinton, and Weird Alice in attendance for a panel discussion afterwards. Thanks also to Brian Robertson. He knows what he did. You can find Kevin on Twitter at @TheKevinHegge, that's Thee Kevin Hegge, all one word. And you can find Madonna Truth or Dare on Blu-ray and DVD from Paramount Home Entertainment in the US and Alliance Video in Canada. It's also available to rent or buy on various VOD platforms. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next week.